What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video, and welcome to your daily news report for Monday, May 2nd. Here's what you need to understand about what's going on right now is that a lot of people, a lot of lawmakers are pushing to see more aid go to Ukraine, go to COVID, and not necessarily go to the American people. Now, I'm going to address that in today's video, but first off, I want to explain what we're going to talk about in today's show. So here it is. First, we're going to talk about consumer spending, because on Friday, there was the PCE, the personal consumption expenditures. This came out. I want to address what it said. We're also going to talk about the housing market, why what we are seeing right now is not particularly good news, but also address what could be coming, especially for those that are looking to buy a house. We're going to talk about the two new Omicron variants. Some are saying that this is something that we definitely need to be aware of. However, it's not a huge concern at this time. We're also going to talk about the Senate and their push to see additional aid go to Ukraine. And lastly, we will talk about Russia news and what is going on there. So let's get right down to it. Here's what I can tell you. One of the most important price indexes for the Federal Reserve, this is the PCE, the personal consumption expenditures. This actually came out on Friday. Now, the reason why I really want to touch on this is because this shows how much consumers are still spending. And over the past 12 months, we are actually up 6.6%. In February, we were up 6.3%, which shows that consumers are still spending more money, even over the time when we were seen as helping out in a war between Russia and Ukraine. That's tough. It's very tough. And the reason I say this is because during times of war, during a potential recession, when we see inflation at 8.5%, we see wages somewhat dropping. This isn't good news, because if we are seeing less money come in, things are costing more, usually consumers stop spending. It didn't happen. Now, the problem with this kind of spending is that many economists predicted that spending would slow because of everything I just listed. Now, in March, spending just kept going. The issue is that also in April, disposable incomes, they rose by 0.5%. That's not a problem. The problem is when adjusted for inflation, they actually fell by 0.4% in the same month. Okay? That's a 0.9% swing. That's pretty substantial for just 1 month. Now, anytime wages can't keep up with inflation, this turns into a major problem. And this is one of the reasons why I say we have to keep looking at what's currently going on. So that is what we'll do. But something else is going to be revealed this week. And this is what could potentially cause, more issues. It's not expected to be a problem, but it could cause more issues. That is the new jobs report. The new jobs report that comes out this Friday. The expected unemployment rate is supposed to drop from 3.6% down to 3.5%. That's good news. We will also be getting more available job openings, the data on that this week as well. So there's going to be a lot of data for the Federal Reserve to look over really over the next 2 weeks. So we could expect some big changes. Whether it's directly from the Federal Reserve or not, we don't know. But I promise I will be here every step of the way to make sure that you know what is actually going on. So the next thing, let's talk about the housing market. And the reason I want to address the housing market is actually pretty simple, because a lot of people are looking into buying a house. They want to get into a home, and that's fine. I understand that a lot of people want to get into a new home because they've spent the last 2 years pretty much cooped up in their existing house or their apartment. Now, the Federal Reserve, their plan is to slow down this trend. That we don't need new people going and buying a new house, as much as they have in the past. Now, when rates were under 3%, many people got into new homes. Millions of Americans refinanced their existing loans, and this drove up the housing market by more than 35%. That's good if you owned a piece of real estate, but if you didn't and you're just now trying to get in, some say that's not a good idea. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that as rates increase, the prices of homes will likely fall. This is typical. And if you can be patient and you can find a great deal, you will come out ahead. But one of the things you must understand is that there is still such low inventory that you might not get prices to drop where you need them to be. Many homes, they're seeing price reductions, which is great, but that doesn't mean they're cheaper than what they were back in September, October, November, December, even January. Prices are continuing to go up, and some of these price decreases are still up over the expected sales price that we had 5 to 6 months ago. And that's the real concern is, are prices actually coming down, or is it just the illusion that they're looking cheaper? So again, if you're looking at buying a house, some say wait out this market, prices will continue to fall. Then when you see they stabilize, then buy it. But we could still see drops over the next 7 to 8 months. We might not see any stabilization until potentially in 2023. So that is not my guess, but that's what many people are expecting. So just be aware of that. Now, let's get into the 2 new Omicron variants, because just recently there were 2 new Omicron variants that have been detected here in the United States. And researchers are showing that these 2 new variants, this is BA.4 and BA.5, these are both more transmissible than the stealth Omicron. And both of these have the ability as of right now to evade antibodies. It doesn't matter if you've been vaccinated or you have contracted the virus in the past. You can, even if you have some antibodies, it doesn't mean you will not get BA.2 or BA.4 or BA.5. So just keep that in mind. Now, the good news is these are not considered to be as severe as a way that it's going to cause additional hospitalizations or deaths, especially among those that have either been vaccinated or have contracted the virus. However, researchers still say that these are still so new that we're learning so much about them, and it will take a little bit more time. Now, the reason why researchers bring up 2 new variants is actually pretty simple. Because many people are expecting we're out of this pandemic. Yes, we're out of this pandemic. Let's get back to normal. The problem is, if you do get sick, some people are just going to assume that's the common cold because, well, we can't have COVID because we had COVID. It's gone. We're out of this pandemic, so we're moving forward. So anytime you are sick now, some are saying that it's just a cold. No big deal, just a cold, when it could potentially be COVID. Now, these new variants are going to continue to pop up. And this is why COVID will never go away, according to many researchers. They say there will always be some variant popping up around the world. And once it makes its way to the US, we must be aware of it. We must be aware of our increased chance of another surge. So that's what they are saying right now. But again, as always, as I know more regarding any new variants, I promise I will bring you those updates as soon as possible. Now, let's talk about what the Senate is planning on doing this week. And the Senate, they're always trying to do something, right? Well, some leaders went over to Kyiv and spoke with President Zelensky from Ukraine. But here's what I can tell you. The Senate doesn't have time to waste when trying to pass additional relief for Ukraine. They need to get something done. The Biden administration has already asked for $33 billion from Congress for additional aid to Ukraine. Nancy Pelosi stated this weekend to President Zelensky himself that the U.S. will provide additional aid very soon. Now, based on what Nancy Pelosi said this weekend, she is wanting Congress to combine the $10 billion of COVID funding with the $33 billion in Ukraine aid. Now, many sources have indicated that this is a good path forward. Even the White House has stated that they are open to this idea. The only problem is, do Republicans support linking $10 billion to $33 billion in Ukraine aid? Now, here's the thing. Republicans do not want $10 billion to go for additional COVID funding, especially if it's new funding. The other issue is Republicans want to see more military aid, They don't want the Biden administration pulling from our military to provide for Ukraine, right? There has to be another option. So this is the plan. If we can see the $10 billion for COVID get combined with the $33 billion for Ukraine, chances are that would pass. And the expectation is it could potentially pass this week. So we will see. Now let's talk about some Russia news, because here's what I can tell you. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, he wants to see all proceeds from the sale of Russian oligarchs and their assets go directly to Ukraine. Now, whether it's coming from the United States and we seize their assets, it's coming from a European country, doesn't matter. But all assets that are seized, they should be sold in order to pay for the damage caused to Ukraine by Russia. Now, according to reports, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says this could be part of the $33 billion set aside for Ukraine that the Senate is waiting to pass potentially this week, but we don't know. That's the expectation, is they're going to push that in. And in other military news, Russia is actually said to have lost about 65% of their ground combat. Now, many believe it's going to take Russia years to reconstruct their previous level of forces. And if this is true, this is very good news, because that means they would likely pull out of Ukraine. They'd go back to the drawing board, head back to Russia. The only bad news is they will come back. And when they come back, according to reports, they would expect Russia is going to build up their troops to a massive amount that they would not lose the next time. So, the next time they come back to Ukraine, chances are their attack will be much bigger, much stronger, and much more severe. So, that's what we know at this time. As always, as I know more regarding what's going on around the world and here in the United States, I promise I will fill you in on all the latest news and updates. Again, just want to thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed today's video, go ahead, hit that like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.